Hey, what comes to mind when you hear the phrase Cold War? Maybe you picture shadowy figures lurking in the background, or dramatic headlines splashed across old newspapers. The term itself sounds mysterious, almost like the title of a spy novel. Maybe you imagine spies in trench coats, passing secret messages in dark alleys, or those iconic black and white photos of world leaders meeting with tense expressions, barely managing a handshake. But what really was the Cold War, and why do we call it cold in the first place? Let's break it down in simple terms, so it all makes sense. After World War II ended, the world was left in ruins, and two powerhouse countries emerged as the new global leaders, the United States and the Soviet Union. Suddenly, these two nations found themselves on opposite sides of almost every major issue, from politics to economics to how people should live their lives. It was democracy versus communism, capitalism versus socialism. The United States believed in free elections and individual rights, while the Soviet Union pushed for a system where the government controlled almost everything. These differences weren't just about politics. They shaped how people thought, worked, and even dreamed. But here's the twist. Rather than fighting head-to-head with tanks and bombs, the two superpowers battled with ideas, influence, and intimidation. Each side tried to win hearts and minds using propaganda, psychological warfare, and cultural competition to sway people to their side. So why call it cold? Well, unlike a hot war, there wasn't a direct, full-scale battle between the United States and the Soviet Union. No massive armies clashing on open fields, no cities reduced to rubble by bombs. Instead, life in the capitals, Washington and Moscow, continued mostly as normal. The streets were peaceful, and the buildings stood tall, untouched by war. But beneath the surface, tensions simmered. The war was cold because it was fought through threats, espionage, and mind games. Spies risked their lives to steal secrets, and intelligence agencies played a high-stakes game of cat and mouse. Think of it as a giant chess match, where every move mattered, and nobody wanted to make the first deadly strike. Each side tried to outsmart the other, always planning several steps ahead. But don't be fooled. Just because it was cold doesn't mean it wasn't dangerous. The threat of nuclear war hung over everyone's heads, and people lived with the constant fear that one mistake could end everything. The world teetered on the edge of disaster more than once. Politicians held tense negotiations, and ordinary people anxiously watched the news, wondering if today would be the day everything changed. The Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 was the closest the world ever came to nuclear war. For 13 days, the world held its breath as the US and the Soviet Union faced off over missiles in Cuba. One wrong move, and things could have gone nuclear in an instant. The arms race was another dangerous game. Both sides built up huge stockpiles of nuclear weapons, just in case the other decided to attack. The idea was that if both sides had enough weapons to destroy each other, neither would dare to start a war. Even space became a battlefield, with the space race. The US and the Soviet Union competed to see who could reach the stars first, launching satellites, sending astronauts, and trying to prove their technology was superior. But the Cold War wasn't just about missiles or politicians arguing on TV. It crept into daily life in ways big and small, shaping how people lived, worked, and even played. Schools held duck-and-cover drills, teaching kids what to do if a bomb ever fell. Spy movies became wildly popular, and people learned to be careful about what they said, worried that someone might be listening. The Cold War's icy rivalry spread across the globe. Countries picked sides, and conflicts broke out in places like Korea, Vietnam, and Afghanistan. These wars weren't just local. They were shaped by the bigger struggle between the US and the Soviet Union. So, in a nutshell, the Cold War got its name because the world's two biggest powers were locked in a fierce struggle, but never fought each other directly. It was a war of nerves, ideas, and influence. Instead, they battled for influence, technology, and ideology, shaping nearly every corner of the globe for almost half a century. The effects of their rivalry can still be seen in today's world politics, technology, and even culture. And even though the war never turned hot, its chills are still felt today. The Berlin Wall, the arms race, and the constant tension left a mark on history that hasn't faded. So next time you hear the term Cold War, remember, it's about more than just the weather. It's a story of tension, suspense, and a world forever changed by a conflict that was fought in the shadows, but shaped the future for generations to come.